Hello, this is Pick, and welcome back to my guide for FTB Sky's Expert mode. Since episode 4 came out, version 1.2.2 of Sky's Expert has released, as well as 1.2.0 by extension. I made a video covering the changes, but if you don't want to watch that, I'll summarize what happened here. The main difference is now that energy is required to operate pedestals. I'm going to hook up the Reaper generator and make it a little better in order to power these pedestals. You get an Amethyst rune from a quest reward, but I'm crafting one right now. This recipe was eventually removed, but it's okay. The one you get from a quest reward is to encourage you to only make one Reaper generator setup. If you want to make more, it'll be more expensive, but unfortunately that's the price we pay for dissuading people from making laggy things for servers. Most pedestal upgrades have had a recipe change. However, this doesn't affect what I've done too much, as they're available when you get nickel, and remember that you can get nickel from summoning in a wandering trader. They sometimes sell raw nickel. Pedestals can also transmit power between one another. Anyway, real quick, what I just did was make a setup for a Shady wizard. They are capable of selling both mendosteins and echo shards, which are useful for crafting things. The Echo Shard not so much anymore because the Amethyst rune had the recipe change, but if you want those mendosteins, just put an arcane core in a villager and a trader. Oh, and since I didn't mention it, the Amethyst rune instantly kills any mobs using that one soul catalyst. I've added a pedestal with an attacker upgrade to the mob farm, just in case the Reaper generator is full. If it's full, it won't kill any of the mobs, which means we're not getting any mob drops, and it also will cause a little bit of lag, of course, but yeah, it's smart and won't waste soul catalysts if it's filled up. The attacker upgrade uses 100 RF per hit. The harvester uses 50 per harvest. I don't know exactly what the numbers are in the other ones. None are awful though. Okay, let's get to that pedestal energy network, shall we? I've put that energy cube from the 10k FE quest as the power buffer for this Reaper generator. While the Peat generators hold a very high 640 RF, the Reaper generators only hold about 4.8k. This is to effectively transfer rate limit them, but that's okay. They still produce more than enough for pedestal work. When working with energy with pedestals, I would recommend just giving them their own network. You can dye a pedestal by holding a dye in your offhand and right-clicking on it. You can also make a dye coloring tool that allows you to save the color of a pedestal and apply it to other pedestals. Because item transfer, fluid transfer, and energy transfer all happen in the same direction between pedestals, you're definitely going to want to be sure to have a separate energy network. Something I should have made a long time ago is force furnaces. They're pretty cheap, they're twice as fast as regular furnaces, and they even store the fuel that they're using. For example, if you were to smelt 3 stone with a coal, it would only use 3 items worth of fuel, and you'd still have 5 left. I'll be automating the peat farm this episode, and something important to note is that saturated peat when put in the coke oven gives 2 peat instead of 1 from smelting. It also doesn't cost power. I think it's time to make a useful RF using machine. The Multiservo Press is going to take care of plates, rods, wires, and gears all at the same time. You will need metal press molds to use it though. Except for plates, those work without anything. To get metal press molds, you're going to need the blueprint for them. After that, you'll just need some wire cutters and 3 steel plates. Put them together in the engineer's workbench. Once you have your mold ready, simply put it in the bottom slot of the Multiservo Press. I'm gonna need a platform to put this peat farm on, so I'm gonna use a builder's wand to do it. You see, the builder's wand has this way if you hold Control, Alt, and right-click, I believe. It allows you to open this menu. It gives you many options for how you want to use your building wand. Or construction wand. Sorry, I'm a boomer. Everything is builder's wand this, RF that, you know. Anyway, if you turn on the randomize function and set it to extend from any block, and then hold some different types of blocks in your hotbar, it'll randomize them when it's placing them for you. This allows you to get some variety in your textures along flat planes. I'm also using many of the tables from the chipped mod to get some variety in texture for my blackstone. There are many different options, and most blocks have every available option, so make sure to make the most of it. Now to discuss the peat farm machine itself. The peat farm machine builds in a 15 by 15 area centered on the peat farm. You can click the show area on the peat farm GUI to see what area it's going to work in and build around it. I've made a fairly large platform just to match the witch platform above. To function, it's going to need RF power, water, and dry peat bog. The water is only to get you started. You don't have to keep putting water into it over time, though you do need to pipe it in. It won't go in via bucket. An aqueous accumulator is a very easy water generator. I'll get to the peat bog automation in a little bit, but generally what you need to know is that the peat farm is going to automatically place the dry peat bog around it in the area that it displays. It will only place down dry peat bog if it both has peat bog in its inventory and it is replacing an air block or a saturated peat bog block. When it replaces a saturated peat bog block, it's not going to pick it up. You'll need an item collector, which is ideal for this task due to its large collection radius. I'll be sending power in via pedestals. It's the easiest way to wirelessly hook all of this up. Again, make sure all of your energy is flowing in the right direction. Time to make a better element container. I'm going to be using it as a part of the peat setup. As I said before, the tiny element storage only holds about 1000 element, while the medium one stores 1 million element. Quite the upgrade. A lot of the early elemental craft better stuff isn't that gated, so I definitely recommend upgrading whenever you get a chance. If you've been loosely following along, you should have a good number of water shards by now. This should cover any drenched steel and springolin shards you need. Okay, time for the main event of this episode, this monstrosity of an automated peat farm. I apologize for a desync between the audio and the video in this section, as it would probably be most helpful if they were synchronized. However, I promise to explain everything as in depth as I need to get you to understand what I did. The peat farm block takes its inputs and it farms the saturated peat. These are picked up by the item collector. The saturated peat is taken from the item collector and sent to the coke ovens. The coke ovens turn the saturated peat bog into peat and send it to the supercooler, which takes that in liquid biomass to make enriched peat. Dry peat bog is made from 3 ingredients. The first is coke dust. This is made by importing coal from the gravel sifter automation, and processing that into coke, and then sending it into a squeezer, which is automatically processing it. I'm using 4 armor stands to make up for the lack of verticality in my setup. This is then sent into one of the droppers. The second ingredient is biomass. Biomass is made by enriching bone meal with earth essence. Earth essence is coming in from the mob farm, where earth shards are being turned into earth essence at site. Bone meal, after being given a head start from bones from the mob farm, is being generated via mushrooms. A material generator is making mushrooms, and one of them has a silk touch pickaxe. This means that it's harvesting mushroom blocks instead of regular mushrooms. There's 2 material generators to keep up with the processing speed. Mushroom blocks have about 20% higher of a compost rate than regular mushrooms. That's additive though, it's 65 to 85. This goes into the elemental infuser, and with the earth essence makes the biomass. The biomass goes 2 ways. Using filtered item transporters, I can send it into both the supercooler and the slow melter. The slow melter is also receiving seeds from the wheat farm. This allows it to both lower the flux rate of the slow melter by only using 20 RF per tick instead of 80, but also allows less reliance on biomass by using another ingredient. This gets sent also into the second dropper. The purpose of these droppers is to determine how much stock I have. The supercooler will clog up if ingredients aren't put into the correct slots. By doing it like this, I ensure only one of each ingredient is being put in at a time. One comparator on each of these is detecting the presence of biomass and coke dust respectively. Dirt is being produced by a third setup, and that's going into a third dropper, but it's just a material generator on rich soil, and it will probably never run out because it's the fastest step. Each of these transmits a signal via redstone link to this logic. The logic block will determine whether or not it sends signals. It's only going to be on if both droppers have inventory, and if the output chest does not have any dry peat bog in it. If that condition is met, it allows the pulse repeater to activate every 3 seconds, which sends a signal for the droppers, and each of them is allowed to send one item at a time. So effectively, this recursive system is going to perpetually make peat. It actually makes saturated peat faster than I can process it. You'll see it backlog later, perhaps. I know I have seen it do so, but I don't necessarily show footage where it's been dumping it on the floor. I'm aware of how complicated this whole thing is. If you want a separate step-by-step video tutorial on how to make it, let me know in the comments. Now that we have power to spare from a bunch of peat generators, I can start using it for various purposes. The first of this is going to be an improved blast furnace. Off camera I made 2 extra blast bricks, and if you use a steel plate on 27 of them and assemble them back in that 3x3x3 shape and put a hopper on top, it will form into the improved blast furnace. The crude blast furnace doesn't allow for automated input and output. The improved blast furnace has this, and it has a bunch of different slots for automation. All inputs go in through the top, that being coal coke and iron ingots, of course. Steel comes out the front, slag goes out the back. Power can go in, optionally, using preheaters. I will definitely be using preheaters. Normally the improved blast furnace doesn't use power, but with the preheaters it does. This is going to greatly increase the production rate of steel. However, this is ultimately meaningless if I don't automate production of iron ingots. I'll get to that, don't worry. To place the preheaters, simply place them facing towards the blast furnace on the sides, 1 block away from where the edge of the blast furnace was. It should be touching. For most of my power transport, I'm going to be using Ad Astra steel cables. They're pretty cheap, especially once I start fully automating steel. However, they sometimes don't render their connections to things. I don't know if they connect to the preheaters or not, so I'm just going to use flux ducts as an in-between. You get some flux ducts from a quest reward. Also, if anything's a quest reward and you want to know which quest has it, just press R on that item, the reward that I'm mentioning, and it'll take you to where you receive it. Okay, I lied just a tidbit. I didn't have quite the materials to make a bunch of peat generators yet, so I'm putting them all down now. It's really not that complicated though. I just take from the drawer with the logistical transporters and it sends to each of the peat generators there. Oh, and I guess the steel cables take the power out of them. How many can this thing support? I don't know. By the end of the episode I'm supporting 8, but this thing holds so much peat it's actually kind of insane. And remember, I'm running double the peat I was in my other worlds, because now I can double the output. I might need more coke ovens, but they're really not that hard to make at this point. What, fire essence? Ooh, the imbuement chamber, and automated fire shards. Clay? Sand zone? Don't make me laugh. The only remotely annoying thing is the ash bricks, and I can probably automate those if I really care to. Now that we have automated raw materials and automated power, let's get on automated raw ore processing. This is going to be quite a simple task with Create. I've hooked up a controller extension from the raw ores up top, and I'm going to be exporting them down here. Brass funnels can accept a filter, as can brass chutes. They're called smart chutes though, I believe. Create has 2 types of filters, item filters and attribute filters. The former is for when you want to set a list of specified items. The latter is when you want to use attributes. Attributes are like tags, but not exactly. Attributes would say raw ores or something to that effect. Ingots. But there's also stuff like can be smelted, can be processed in the washer, can be processed in the smoker, etc. In this case, I'm just going to accept raw ores and have all of them come down here onto the belt. They're then going to get sent sideways and go through the lava fans. Make sure all of the fans are blowing in the correct direction, otherwise they're not going to work properly, as I've said before. Because we're only smelting items directly in front of the fans though, it's very good to use a rotation speed controller and just have it run at 1 RPM. This means each fan is only going to use 2 SU and that does the smelting at the same speed, because fan speed is not affected, only distance. At the end, I can put a brass funnel on a storage controller set to a separate network of drawers. I'll put another attribute filter on this drawer and make sure that it only accepts ingots. The last set of complication on this line is going to be a pulverizer I set up. Lead, when pulverized, can turn into silver dust. It's only a small chance, but you can boost that with auxiliary sieves. You also don't need crap loads of silver at the time being anyway. At least not until you get access to Springle and Desh meshes, which allow processing of raw silver from gravel. It took a few tries for me to get a design I liked, but basically a brass filter filters the raw lead into the pulverizer, making sure all lead goes into the pulverizer. The lead exports up into a chest. I tried a few different designs, but ultimately it won't output everything unless it has a place to send everything, so the auto output is sending into a chest, and that comes back down through a chute onto another belt that merges with the same smelting line. And yeah, that's basically automated ore processing. I don't really need to get any higher yields out of it for the time being. I think it's time to move all of my storage into the house. It just makes it easier to access everything when it's all in one place. The easiest way to do this is by using packing tape. If you have packing tape in your inventory and shift right click in inventory with paper in your inventory as well, it'll put that inventory in your inventory so you can move the inventory into another inventory as a location where you store all of your inventories. It's like cardboard boxes pretty much. I also whipped up some more bookworm charms. Having just that 2 extra is going to be very helpful for managing all of my storage in my storage house. Yeah, the Zen Garden Sifting House kind of became a storage house, what are you gonna do? So, I kind of want a Nautilus shell. So you see, if you get a Nautilus shell, you can get a temporal pouch. It's like time in a bottle. I don't really use this stuff much, but I figure other people are going to want to see it, and because this is a guide, sometimes I have to at least mention things I don't necessarily use. To increase your luck and chance of getting treasure when fishing, you're going to want to make some emerald apples. If you eat them, it will increase the amount of luck you have by 2 stages for a minute and a half. Combine this with that free Unbreaking 8 or something Mending Luck of the Sea 2 rod you get from a quest reward, and you can fast sort of get fishing treasure, I guess, if you make the pool the right size. The Cyclic Fisher doesn't seem to work. Maybe you just need a really big pool to make it get treasures. I haven't tested it out that much yet. In all honesty, this was kind of a waste of time anyway. I'm probably just going to use the Industrial Foregoing Auto Fisher when I get to that point. But if you want to grow Cyclic's apple sprouts, just put them underneath some leaves. So remember how I said you could turn coal coke into diamonds? Yeah, it's not that complicated. Just put a block of coal coke in the pressure chamber and it'll turn into a diamond with high enough pressure. This is a good way of getting more diamonds if you need them. And since diamonds are a little more plentiful now, or at least renewable in some sense of the word, there's an event that converts diamond blocks into budding amethyst. However, you need to be standing within at least 24 blocks of a block of diamond in order for it to convert. I'm just gonna let this sit here and grow amethyst. I'll be making an amethyst golem eventually, maybe next episode, but for right now I'm just gonna let it grow because I don't really need a lot of amethyst, and I can just barter with piglins because I have infinite gold. I should also mention that I don't tend to AFK too often. I like making sure that you guys don't have to wait too long in order to make your setups, and that's why I make good setups and not AFK setups. Alright, you want to see another monstrous setup for automation? This time I'm automating plate production. Because plates are so ubiquitous in recipes at this stage, and in general, I figured that you should at least automate iron, gold, copper, aluminum, and steel at this point. You're going to want a lot of each of them. To handle this, I've set up near this drawer controller a bunch of multi-servo presses. A logistical sorter is sticking off of the drawer controller to limit what's going where. The logistical sorter is useful for when you want to send items into particular places. In this case, I want a dedicated machine for each type of plate. The logistical sorter allows you to send items based on item stacks, which is just basically an item-wide list, and tags. You can put as many of them in there as you want, but it does get a little cumbersome to have a very large setup. If you'd like to see another large setup using logistical sorters, check out my developer commentary for Integration by Parts DX. I believe it was episode 5. It was in the thumbnail. In this case though, you can also define which color it goes to. Logistical sorters can be sorted by color. It effectively paints the item and will only send it to pipes of that corresponding color. Blue items only go to blue pipes, green items only go to green pipes, etc. This means that I can send iron to blue, gold to green, copper to aqua, and aluminum to dark red. I will also be sending steel to purple, but I don't have steel automated yet. I will get to that in a moment. Once all of your pushing and pulling is set up properly, beware of other adjacent inventories, belts do count as an inventory. You can simply route everything back into the storage controller because I've set up separate drawers designed specifically for plates. If a pipe does not have a color, it will send anything through that pipe, so beware. Other than that, I can set up all of these tags. I'm just going to use forge ingots blah 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 for each of these because that's the only thing in those storage systems anyway. Restricted systems can be sometimes convenient in that manner. Alright, steel's been taken care of, so I can add that to the list of things that's being sent out by the logistical sorter. Steel automation wasn't too complex. The pyrolyzer is your best friend as it makes coal coke much faster than the coke ovens. Just be sure you're managing all of their outputs. Of course, I've moved the blast furnace from where it was to this new location. I'll pretty this up at some point. I wasn't sure how much I'd be shoving into this quote-unquote basement. I might just add like a downward spiky bit on the island. While I would have loved to use a drawer with a pushing upgrade, it will only push things from the last slot, so it was only pushing iron. Thankfully, the logistical transporter was more than enough, as it freely transports the iron and coal coke separately into the top. I just put a void chest for the tar that is being produced by coking, and the slag that's produced by blasting. I'm not going to need a whole ton of it, so just one drawer with a void upgrade should be more than enough. Also, I would definitely recommend automating cactus. Void upgrades are much cheaper to make with cactus and iron nuggets than it is with obsidian, at least right now. But yeah, I've moved all of the plates into the upper storage level, so now I have easy access to all of that stuff, and that's very useful for all the engineering blocks I need, because in this whole process I managed to craft up another 16 machine frames. This is just a show off of my 8 Peat generators. Combined they make 680 RF per tick, which is quite good for this stage in the game. I'm probably not going to need too much extra, but I have plenty of room to expand. I would also definitely recommend this because if you need remote setups before Flux networks, it's much easier to transport items at that stage. I'll definitely be making use of that with ender drawers later, but we haven't gotten there yet, so don't worry about it. That's about it for this episode. I've done quite a bit of automation though, so there was plenty of content, and if you have any questions about my setups, let me know. And again, if you want that peat farm video, let me know as well. Things are shaping up on my Skyblock world though. For me at least, it's more of a problem of where it's gonna go rather than how am I going to make all of this. But that's why I like that engineering stuff. So until then, this has been Pick, I'm glad to have seen you, and I hope to see you again.